Greetings and salutations, fellow gamers. This week's episode is going to be discussing playing your character. What we're talking about is playing role-playing games, tabletop games such as Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, or whatever the case may be. Now, the first issue I want to touch on is player versus character knowledge. This is an important distinction that a lot of people have trouble keeping in separate boxes, because as a player character, as a player, that's you in the real world watching this, you're going to know a lot more than your characters are going to know, and you're going to understand the situation in much different terms than your characters are going to understand it. You can take, for example, the person, like when you're watching a horror movie and you're screaming, "Don't go outside! Don't go outside!" And what does the girl do? She, of course, goes outside, and what happens? She, of course, gets killed by the axe. So, you screaming, "Don't go outside, don't go outside," that constitutes player knowledge. Character knowledge is a different animal entirely. Character knowledge is what your character knows in the moment where they're at. This is a difficult distinction to make because you have to cut off a lot of your own intellect and try and have your thought processes reveal only what your character would know at the time. Mineral water. So, for example, I was playing a game one time where my character was a fighter. She was lawful good. Her name was Adriel Threll. She was one of the lieutenants in the town guard. And we were at an arena match, a jousting tournament, if you will. And my character had beaten down the Black Knight, who was obviously a very sinister and evil character. Well, after knocking him down and he, "I surrender, I give up," player knowledge, me, Gary the player, knew that he obviously was going to attack me as soon as I turned my back. I mean, that's just what clearly was going to happen. But character me, Adriel, she believed that she had defeated this guy and he was going to be honorable just like she was. So, I had the character turned around and started to walk off towards the king. Of course, the Black Knight, being a less than chivalric person, got up and, stabbed me. So, that was something that was difficult for me to go through because I ended up losing the tournament because of that. But at the same time, I had to play my character with the knowledge that she had. That can be detrimental a lot of times when you're playing a game, but if you don't make that separation, there won't be any role-playing involved if you just do everything to the best of your ability at all times. Taking on the outside knowledge that there's no way your character could possibly have. So, remember that. It may not always be the best thing for your character in the moment, but it will be the best thing for your character in the long run and the story in the long run to maintain its flavor, its consistency, its joie de vivre. If you keep your character and player knowledge separate. And your dungeon master, your game master, your storyteller, what have you, they will respect you a lot as a player if you can manage to do that. It's a difficult skill to acquire, but one that is very important to work on. Also, you want to make a well-rounded character. So think about what a real person would be and make them rich and deep. What I mean by this is when you have a let's I've been using D&D a lot. Let's go to a Star Wars campaign. When you have someone, a scoundrel, for instance, jetting about in space, of course he's going to have some engineering for when his ship breaks down, and he's got to get his Hydra spanner, and of course he's going to have gunfighting and maybe some booby trapping and maybe a little bit of hacking. He's going to have a lot of skills that are very functional in the game, but I strongly encourage you to ensure that he has skills that characters would have that keep the flavor of what he is and what he's doing. For example, he might have a couple of ranks in ballroom dance. Why? Well, he might be the type of scoundrel that goes around and romances the emperor, or not emperor, the king's daughter of some planet, Alderaan, let's say. He might have a few ranks in poetry recital or something to that effect because he's a very Casanova-like character. Don't skimp on your character. Don't take skills that are just for function and make your character just flat and uninteresting to play. Because if you have a good game master, he'll reward you with situations where you can use those skills to encourage you to play your character and enjoy the depth to which your character can get to. And even if you don't, just for your own sake, having those skills helps you define your character in your own mind. Because if you just have a character that's the rogue and he's good at sneaking and lockpicking, he's going to be so uninteresting to play after a while. I mean, especially if you're trying to give him a character and none of his skills or feats or talents or whatever are backing that up, it's going to be a real detriment to you. So invest in your character, both his backstory and his personality, and don't skimp on the skills. For your character's desires, you also want to make sure that you're building them in a way that makes sense for the character, and figure out what they are when you're creating your character. You as a player, of course, want to have a successful character that tells a story. I think any good player wants to have their character be part of a story, be part of something grand, something meaningful, something that makes sense. Otherwise, why are we even playing this game? Because if you're here to rack up money or acquire kingdoms or titles, we're playing a game, and none of that's real. But if you're here to tell a story, that's something that'll stick with you. At the other players at the table. It's those moments that are funny, that are daring, that are perilous, and you may have a party that completely dies. But if you're all doing the best that you can, then it's not a death in vain. It means something. So figure out what your character's desires are and have him work towards that accomplishment. He shouldn't be just willy-nilly sacrificing whatever he's trying to reach for the good of the party. I mean, I think that party unity is important, but don't make your character without any goals of their own. They shouldn't just be there to support the party. Nobody in real life is just with a group of people to support them. They have their own desires, their own things they want to accomplish, be they as grand or as minor. I felt like that needed a little bit more, but it's not getting any more. So, play to your character's desires, not your own. What I mean by that is, if your character desires to live a simple life on a farm, you, as the player, may never want a farm. You may live in a city and not even know how to plant a seed. But if that's what your character's desire is, make sure that he's always working towards that, because he may forego a lot of money, riches, and titles in order to have a simple life. And that can be a very compelling and powerful story. And it's a character you'd always remember, rather than just having the standard cookie-cutter adventurer that's out to get money. Because when they die and their character sheet's thrown away, you'll forget their name. But if you have a character that's really working towards something unique and individual, that'll stick with you. And feel free to have your characters adjust their needs and desires as their story advances. They may come across something that horrifically changes them. They may come to a burned out farmhouse where there's a family there that's been slaughtered, and your character's desire may change from living a peaceful existence to wanting to right wrongs and avenge evil. Conversely, you may have a character that's flat and cookie cutter, and something happens where they realize that the accumulation of wealth is not the most important thing. It may be to find a love or to protect a kingdom. So I encourage you to play to those. Let those moments that are deep and impactful for your character, let them become a part of their story. Don't brush them off. Don't discard them for transient purposes. If there's something that happens to your character and it's meaningful, let it mean something. And finally, I want to kind of touch on acting like your character. Now, the term RPG stands for role-playing game, and one of the things that's enjoyable about the game is you get to take on the persona of someone other than yourself, which is something that most sane people don't get to do very often, maybe for Halloween. So when you're playing your game and you find out what kind of character you want to make sure you play that character. Perhaps your character is a rigid, militant guy. Sit up straight at the table and talk, very assuredly and confident as they would. Perhaps it's a sneaky thief, so you're going to want to, be a little bit more on your toes, hunch your shoulder, and kind of like look around. Take the time to act like your character, to portray them at the table. That'll add an even deeper level of meaning and richness. And it'll be a lot easier to be in character when you do that. And the other players at the table, they'll thank you for it, as will the DM, because they'll be able to actually see who you're playing. I mean, it may be that you're a guy playing a female or vice versa, but that doesn't matter as long as you attempt to put on the mannerisms of what the character is. That'll go a long way to making your role-playing experience a deeper, richer, and more meaningful event. You can also try and adjust your voice. Some people are better than others at putting on dialects, or make your voice really deep. You're a hero, or really high if you're a girl. Just kind of experiment with it and see how you want to go. But don't be satisfied with a character that's not your best. Every character that you build should be an investment of yourself into them, because you're trying to tell their story. Don't let a person's story go to the wayside because you're not willing to put the effort in. If you're not willing to put the effort in, don't play the game, because there's nothing more upsetting to me as a player or a dungeon master than sitting down at a table with a group of people that I know are uninterested in and not invested in their characters. Be invested. And the last thing I want to talk about is, try new things. Don't let yourself get typecast into, one role, like, oh, he always plays the wizard, or she always plays the scoundrel. Don't let yourself get painted into a corner like that. Explore new characters, new builds, new types. If you can't think of anything off the top of your head, there are many online generators out there to help you just kind of get an idea for what kind of character you can play. Explore that and, see what it is. I remember one time I was playing this character. It was for a one-shot. I don't really remember what his name was, but I thought I would play against my type. I normally play like a wizard or a noble, something to that effect. So I built a character that was a fighter, and he was kind of a brash, braggartly kind of guy, and he didn't really think a lot. He kind of just did whatever, and amazingly enough, the dice were in my favor that day, and so a lot of the things he did worked out, which was really fun, because he was like, he would punch out an orc and just go, ha ha! And, it was a lot of fun to play a type that I hadn't played before, and I enjoyed it immensely. So don't limit yourself. You're better than that. You can do it. Just put the time and effort into it. Think about what your character wants, what they need, what their desires are, how they plan to achieve them, what they're willing to sacrifice to get to them, and what they're not willing to, the things that are bedrock to their character. So, that's all I have for this week. Please comment, subscribe if you like it, and let me know what you think. I'll be posting another one next week, but until then, have a good week.